What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to 8 Cubes, the show where two of Marvel Snap's top players break down everything you need to know about Marvel Snap in this week. And we have a fairly limited group of topics here because there's a fairly limited group of top decks. But before we jump into that, let's talk about Marvel Snap's newest card, Cannonball, a 5/8 that when you play it, it will move the highest power card out of the lane that it's played in on your opponent's side. If that card cannot be moved, it will be destroyed and replaced with a rock. Lamby, what are your thoughts on Cannonball?
I think this card would have been better if we didn't have hope in the game because I like to treat Cannonball as like a generic Magneto on turn 5. I say that because
Mm-hmm.
Thanos does Magneto on turn 5 a lot.
Right.
Cannonball allows you to potentially clock a location because playing it on turn 5, there's a good chance that your opponent has 3 cards in another location and you clock like a particular location by moving stuff. So the problem now is that I think Cannonball is going to be relatively low impact because there's like I mentioned this in one of the previous videos where like Vision is still just a premium 5 cost card that everybody wants to play, right? So Vision is just a strictly better card. Of course, Cannonball, people say things like it kills Blob, which yes, it does kill Blob. Could be relevant. I don't think it's a bad card for what it's worth. I just think it's gonna be relatively not impactful. What do you think?
I think it's a good point that because Thanos can play these turn 5 Magnetos already, there's just such less of a desire for Thanos to be a deck that plays 5 drops, and it's not like Cannonball is going to create anything in that space that makes it incredibly able to break into this metagame, right? Like right now, I can't imagine any sort of like typical mid-range deck doing anything that can keep up with Thanos or with discard, even, right? And that kind of typical mid-range deck is where a card like Cannonball, which is just like, oh, this is a good card. It goes in, the Legion spot in Silky Smooth or whatever, right? Like that's what you think of when you see it. And I just don't think there's any room for that in this metagame. We'll have to see what happens post OTA because I gotta imagine they're looking at the back end on this and they're thinking, all right, we gotta do something about this. But right now, I'm just not seeing a spot for Cannonball. My expectation for Cannonball is what will happen is people will put it in Thanos and be like, oh my god, look at my win rate with this deck. And it's like, yeah, you're playing Thanos, right?
You're
Like it
playing a
doesn't really
Thanos
matter what
deck
the 12th card in here
with
is, you're
Hope
playing
and
Thanos.
Mockingbird.
Yeah. Hey, that's my expectation for Cannonball is a lot of like, yo, look at this clip where Cannonball was good. And it's like, it's not like it's gonna be bad. It's probably
Look
gonna
at
be
my
fine.
Cannonball deck.
Right. Like it's probably gonna be fine, right? Like it's like it's a good card with good stats and a good ability that people aren't expecting. It can be a cube juicer, you know what I mean? Like it can do stuff. And I think that that's sort of where my head is at with Cannonball right now, where it's like this card could be good, but the metagame has such bigger issues to deal with that I just don't think it's going to be like overwhelmingly impactful. Speaking of those bigger issues, Thanos, the Mad Titan, is here to stay. Let's split this up into two topics. We're first going to talk about why Thanos is so good. My basic theory on A, why Thanos is so good, and B, why Thanos has remained such a problem or come back from the dead so many times, is that Thanos just occupies such a wide space in terms of design space. There's just so much that Thanos does that like a new card could synergize with. And so as they build out of like just doing basic cards, as they try more unique and interesting designs, what ends up happening is just Thanos is the limiter on what they are allowed to do. You look at a card like Mockingbird, who is probably totally fine if it weren't for the Thanos stones being a thing that discounted her. You look at a card like Blob, who is not necessarily going to be totally fine, but being in a Thanos deck really accentuates how strong he is. You look at a card like Professor X, which is basically only ever good in Thanos decks. In pure lockdown decks, Professor X is typically or was typically like the worst option compared to Spider-Man, right? Like when High Evo Lockdown was cruising right along, it vastly preferred playing Spider-Man to Professor X. That was old Spider-Man, of course. And then when it had to only play Professor X, it kind of fell out of the metagame because it's not a very good card unless you're accelerating it a lot easier. And there's a lot of things like this with Thanos where it's like, what is it exactly that makes Thanos this good?
Yeah, so just to echo a bit of your sentiment right now, it's really because Mockingbird and Hope, like the two latest cards that are released into the game, just fit perfectly into the Thanos deck. Like it just makes what they are doing, like the good stuff that they are doing, even more convenient and even better. So my experience with the current Thanos deck is really just to be completely frank, it's really playing a tier 0 deck on easy mode right now. Because let's just like put it into perspective here. Like Mockingbird. Okay, let's talk about Mockingbird first. You play stones on curve anyway. You want to play your stones early so you can play your big stuff later, right? You play your early game, then you play your late game. Mockingbird just incentivizes you to do your normal thing. Like just playing out your cards makes the Mockingbird overpowered. You play a whatever stone on turn 1, you play a stone on turn 2. Mockingbird on turn 3 is a 3/9, by the way. So that's crazy already. And I really do think that this deck right now has so little counters in the sense that it's not like it's an unbeatable deck. It's just
Yeah.
more like it's the deck that does the good stuff more consistently than every other deck, right? Superb early game leading up to a superb late game, gets to play all the new good cards and with no downside, honestly. And there is like, I mean, Professor X, Aliyah all perfectly fit your game plan of jamming out early stats. And even have like even a few like weeks back, we got like Cow Obsidian, which also just made the deck like so much better. This deck is just it's just the recipe of a good deck right now. There's like nothing bad I can say about the deck, which is very funny because Time Stone obviously got nerfed, but it's not even really a nerf if you think about it, because now when you Time Stone, your opponent can't really tell what got discounted, right? Like they just don't have any idea. So in the past, like when you play Time Stone on turn 3, you expect a Professor X on turn 4. But the thing is, now if you play Time Stone, you could get like a 4-cost Professor X, and there is no indicator on where and when that can come down, right? Because you don't actually see the energy go up to 5, so you don't know that the Prof X is coming down early. It could just be like Prof X on turn 4, and then you're like, wait, this thing costs 4? You will never know. So Time Stone isn't that bad of a nerf anyway.
It is a nerf though. I think one of the things that really sticks out to me is that like it's a nerf, but it doesn't feel like it to a lot of people because the card got easier to play.
Yeah.
And this is the actually incredibly fun thing about it is the way they nerfed Time Stone removed tension in the deck, right?
Yes.
So there was tension in the deck between like, okay, do I play this Time Stone right now to discount my Mockingbird, or do I wait till I can ramp out something big? And now there's no tension there. You're just playing the Time Stone every time, right? Like there's no reason not to play the Time Stone, which goes right along with what Mockingbird is already doing. It's just like you want to excel all your stones out onto the board. And I think that's actually my least favorite thing. That my least favorite dynamic about Thanos right now is mirrors are even more dependent on Mind Stone Mockingbird, right?
Mhm.
The two M's, where it's just, do you have that early Mind Stone? Because if you have that early Mind Stone, you probably have that free Mockingbird. And it's very, 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 very draw dependent and very, very, very like unfair if one person has it and the other person doesn't.
Yeah, just want to add one more point and also to echo your sentiment once again, which is like it's really playing a tier 0 deck on easy mode, because what you're really doing is you have no reason to really not play out your stones, right? Because in the past, it's like, oh, I need to maybe hold my space stone, hold my reality
Yep.
stone for very specific interactions, hold my time stone for turn 3 going into like turn 5 cost on turn 4. Now you just play out everything. Time stone, whatever time stone discounts, then you just go from there. And also just playing out the stones gives you the cheapest Mockingbird of your life, right? So, and also obviously Cow Obsidian needs stones on the board as well. So it's just like, just do your thing. It doesn't really matter what you do, just do the thing, and then like everything falls in place perfectly.
So balance wise, what would you want to do about Thanos?
Man, I joked about this casually, but like we could like remove all the draw from all the stones and change Mind Stones effect. Because like, come on, we already got rid of the Soul Stones draw. Power Stone has no draw. Time Stone got nerfed. Space Stone previously got nerfed. All the stones more or less got hit a little bit, but it's still the way it is, right? So this probably won't happen, but like, can you imagine if they just like got rid of all the draw from all the stones and changed Mind Stone to like maybe draw 1 or something else? That's drastic, but that's definitely a way to nerf the Thanos deck. Mockingbird itself is quite interesting because you could easily just say make it not work with stones. That's like one of the ways you do it, and the other way is like maybe make it a 5/7. But honestly, Mockingbird at 5/7, I would probably still play it in Thanos, right? Because it's like a 1/7/0/7. Maybe you really have to make Mockingbird like cost 6, or even like do the death thing where Mockingbird costs like 7.
I think if you do that, like that's the thing about Mockingbird. Is like I don't want to balance every card for Thanos. This is what I was
Yeah.
talking about when we go to like this idea of why Thanos keeps coming back, and it's because of the wide swath of design space he operates in. Like right now, we have Thanos, and Thanos is just playing like it fits with so many good cards in a very good way. Like okay, why does it fit so well with Hope Summers? Because it's a deck that has a lot of small things and then a lot of really big things. It fits extremely well with Hope Summers just by nature, right? Like that's just like how it works, right? Why does it fit so well with Mockingbird? Well, it fits so well with Mockingbird because those small things didn't start in your deck, so you can get a free Mockingbird. Why does it fit so well with Blob? Because you have more cards in your deck, meaning you're more likely to hit something extremely big off the Blob at some point. Because you're on turn 6, you have 6 cards left in your deck, and your opponents only have 3, so you're probably getting something big. Your Blobs are more reliable. Like, and there's just like for every card that comes out, it's like, why does this work so well in Thanos? And the answer is because Thanos occupies such a wide swath of design space that as we're going into like I don't know the midpoint of Marvel Snap's lifespan, as they're expanding how they design cards, as they're doing things that are weirder and more out there, every time they do something that's weird and out there, it goes in Thanos because Thanos occupies such this incredibly large space. So I don't want to fix Mockingbird. I don't want to fix Blob. I want to fix Thanos. And I think, we're talking about like, oh, they'll never remove the draw off. Like, I think at minimum, what they need to do is something like Mind Stone only draws one. Like at minimum, they need to
Yeah,
be like
true.
Mind Stone that only draws one now. If they want to take more draws off the guy, I'm cool with that too. Like I genuinely think that like this is a thing where it's like they need to make it so this guy does not stop them from designing cards. I would be looking at a potential overall rework of how he works entirely. If he weren't Thanos, like I think we'd have done that a long time ago. I kind of think that I have come around to the idea that this guy, like people talk about Mr. Negative and the Mr. Negative design space, right? Well, like then that's not real. But I think Thanos that is real. I think Thanos is probably the number one design space constrictor in the game because he is such a wide card. A card that occupies so many spaces that like whenever you want to do something cool, it's like, all right, well, it's broken in Thanos. And I think that needs to change.
Yeah, like the more I think about it, actually, they should totally just like take off all the draw from the stones like for a period and see what happens. It'll be crazy, right? Can you imagine if they take off all the draw and then the deck is still tier 1? That's gonna be a real. I doubt it,
If
but
they
like
do that, like I don't
yeah,
think that would happen, but yeah, they'd have to delete the card at that point,
yeah.
right?
Try it once. Let's see what happens. No one's gonna really complain if Thanos is not top dog again.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at this point. We're just like, it's been 4 months of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. Just drop a nuke on him. Like, next up is what I would say is the only deck that is close to or plausibly, I wouldn't say above, but you could argue it, Thanos in power, and that's traditional discard. And I think a lot of people are just straight up sleeping on this deck. This is, when I talk about like decks that are real, Thanos, we're talking about Thanos, it's a tier 0 deck on easy mode. The only other deck that I consider like legitimately up there is discard. And I think that says a lot about what discard is and about what discard does and about how hard to interact with it is and about just how much power this deck has. And I think it's like kind of not even close, right? Like it's like Thanos,
Yep.
discard, everything else. And that's how the metagame looks to me right now.
Yeah, so this card in general is something that I found a lot of favor in recently. I actually, looking at my stats, I have like 100 plus games of this card in just like 2 days because I really invested a lot of time in the deck right now because it's really one of the few decks that we talked a bit earlier about that like Thanos is tier 0, but not like unbeatable tier 0. This deck can outpower Thanos often enough because if you look at the cards that it has in the deck, right, like Dracula, Morbius, Collector, all these things, no one's playing Shadow King, no one's playing Enchantress, and Dracula's uninteractable. Like these things just scale super high relatively easily, and like these cards also beat Professor X. They beat Alioth. It's like cards that don't like lose to like the common Thanos like power plays. So this deck is really very well positioned right now. Of course, recently they got like the meek buff, which is insane. The Proxima, which is like I think auto include in every discard deck right now. It's like free 7
Yeah.
power card. And also of course zero trees in swarms. Like don't underestimate the power of like multiple 0/3 cost cards. It's really the deck is just very well positioned, the most well positioned it's ever been. Of course, it does lose to the usual suspects of like destroy, but we need to remember that in terms of interactivity, destroy is a lot easier to interact with and counter. And also it's probably a bit more inconsistent right now. So yes,
Yes.
this card is not like unbeatable. Thanos is not unbeatable, but these two decks, why I think and why KM also thinks that they are the top dogs right now, is because they do their broken thing more often than other decks.
Mhm. And it's just hard for other decks to compete when they're doing their thing. It's a consistency thing, right? Like discard is so often doing what makes it strong, right? Like it's so often just like, I'm gonna make a 12 power Morbius and like a 20 power Dracula, and I'm also gonna play like Modok, which has decent stats. I'm gonna play a free Proxima, some free swarms. I'm just gonna generally put like, 70 power on the board.
Yeah.
And that's just really good.
Yeah, and it's not even difficult to do. Back to the same theory as like Thanos, like it's not like you have to go out of your way to really
Yeah.
find ways to generate this power. Just playing the cards out generates these powers so naturally. Like playing Modok gets you like a 0/7 in Proxima. A 5/8
Mhm.
Modok also gives your Dracula plus 10 power. Sorry, your Morbius plus 10 power makes your Dracula like a 24 power on average. It's just so convenient.
In terms of specific builds, though, I think there is still some ambiguity with discard. And it's not like, oh, okay, we don't know what discard deck is the best. We do, right? Like it's about like the 12th card in that deck a lot of the time. The way I look at discard builds is you have your basic discard build, you add in Corvus Helicarrier, which I think you probably should. I think if you're running Helicarrier, you want Corvus. If you're running Corvus, you want Helicarrier. That's sort of how you make up for the general issues that you have. And then you have 2 spots left, and typically you're trying to figure out how to fit in a Meek, right? So the way I think about those last 2 spots is pick 2 of 3, Meek, Lady Sif, Colleen Wing. And those are the final slots in the deck.
Yeah, so just nice when you were talking about this, I was looking over at my stats and I want to talk a bit about the builds a bit. So
Mhm.
I initially wasn't a fan of the whole helicarrier in the deck because firstly it makes your Dracula a little bit worse with
It
Apocalypse.
does.
But just based on the numbers of my own like games, my helicarrier versions are actually performing like way better than my non-helicarrier versions. And to be completely frank, yes, I don't really like the fact that like my Draculas are a bit worse with Apocalypse. But introducing the helicarrier option is very very real because when you play like Lady Sif or Modok to discard Helicarrier, it's like it fills your whole hand with random stuff. Firstly, yes, you buff your collector by like +5, +6, which is like super relevant, right? And also the cards you get from Helicarrier are actual outs that you can find. You can try to find for a specific matchup. Not saying that you're meant to hit it, because there's like 300, 200 cards in the game, but it's like you fill your hand with 6 random generations, for example, right? It's not too difficult to say that, oh, I randomly generate an Enchantress, randomly generate a Shang, randomly generate another like Morbius or whatever. Like it's all very possible. So I think that's one of the powers of the Helicarrier. It's that it's as much as it's random, it's not like random and it's all bad. There's a good chance that the cards that you generate are actually potentially relevant. And yeah, I think for now I'm actually very firmly playing like Lady Sif and no Colleen Wing, which is sad because I like Colleen Wing to discard my swarms, but Lady Sif gives you the consistency of discarding your Helicarrier. And of course, the Apocalypse as well. So the Meek personally I like a lot because it is very often like almost a one-cost vision in this deck. Like let's say you get the Meek out on turn 1 or 2. It's very, very often gonna be like by turn 6, maybe 6, 7-ish power, which is crazy, right? For a one-cost card that can move anywhere. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Meek. What about you?
I am on Colleen Wing and Meek.
Okay.
I like the helicarrier stuff. I sort of view as like, all right, like I like this, but like what helicarrier is there for is my Corvus stuff, right? Like I'm gonna try to like hit
Yeah.
helicarrier off Corvus, like that's what that's there for, right? Like if I completely ruin my hand with Corvus, then I can like maybe be a helicarrier deck, right? But generally, I'd rather be doing the discard stuff specifically, and I think like helicarrier Corvus is my backup plan. And so I have built into being more of a discard deck by the idea is like, all right, I have Colleen Wing. I Colleen Wing, get rid of my swarms. Then when I Corvus, the Corvus might hit one of the swarms a little more reliably. Because a lot of the times when like I noticed Corvus stuff being good against me was not when it was Helicarrier stuff. Like the Helicarrier stuff, yeah, that's fine. But like Corvusing into good stuff is really, really strong.
Yeah.
And making your Corvus not bad is really, really strong. And so more stuff in my hand that makes my Corvus all upside, I'm very interested in that. And that's sort of why I'm on Helicarrier.
Yeah, can I just say that like the point you mentioned is super. I didn't realize this, but it's also super relevant. But like I think a few other episodes ago, I was like saying like, oh, Corvus might be the worst card in this deck because like the extra energy might not even be that great. But if you discard Helicarrier,
With Helicarrier, yeah.
you just happen that extra one energy every turn gives you like you can squeeze like extra helicarrier cards onto the board, right? Like this has happened to me so much, and I realized that it's actually a real thing. Like you can go like Corvus on turn 3 and then discard helicarrier, and then like you get like what 6 random cards, and then you just look at ways to play them on the board on turn 4 because like you just have that extra energy, and it kind of just fits.
You're not playing Loki. One energy is not the same as like the energy discount that Loki gets you, but it's like a similar kind of thing where it's like that extra energy does go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the OTA because there's an OTA, I believe next Thursday or this Thursday. It's coming out on Monday, so like 3 days from now. So what do you want to see in that OTA?
Well, firstly, some Thanos changes. I mean, we cannot have this Tier-0 deck just being so good, right? Like maybe the stones change. That's probably like going too far, but like something to Thanos, I guess. I don't think they will do anything to Mockingbird. It's a relatively new card. Hope Summers should stay the same as well because it's a good not broken card.
Yeah.
We've discussed this before. I guess once again, since we can't really like completely nerf things into oblivion, I want buffs. Like with OTAs right now, I think I want to see some buffs. I don't exactly know what I want in particular, but maybe a point or two here or there on like cards that were once good but not good anymore. Giving these cards like 1 or 2 more points back should put some of them back in the spotlight.
I've got 3 absolutely ridiculous proposals for you. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, ridiculous proposal number 1. Take Mind Stone to draw 1, and then also take the draw off another Thanos Stone.
I can see that happening, yes. I can definitely see that happening.
Ridiculous proposal number 2, make Dracula work on turn 6 instead of at the end of turn 6.
Okay, wait, no. I'm gonna stop you right there because this is the first time this card has been OP in a year. I don't want this card to go away at all. I want
this nerf Thanos, this card is so clearly the best deck that
let it be the best for once.
No, like the best by like a lot.
Okay, fine.
Like
fine.
it's like I right now we're talking about like the meta is Thanos and discard and everything else, and it's like I'm a little worried that if they just nerf Thanos, it's going to be discard and everything else, right? Because discard was already like, all right, this is in competition for like the best, you know, silky smooth type deck, and then it got the Meek buff, and now Meek is a 1-cost vision, and it's like this is so very clearly going to be an issue. Like if you just nerf Thanos here, we're immediately just gonna play discard all the time. Like that feels like something I would not want. I would hope they pick up on that. All right, you ready for my?
Maybe we take a power off Modok or something.
That would work too. Actually.
Yeah.
Like just do something, right? Like acknowledge that it's an issue.
Yep.
I got one more that's like really off the wall. Revert Werewolf by Night.
Ooh, I like this one the most. I like this one the most. I legitimately like this one the most.
I think it's a good one.
No, this is just insane, right? Because you just literally introduce another top deck by like changing Werewolf back. Because the bounce deck just gets so much better if Werewolf becomes a tree.
But you know what deck can't play Werewolf well?
Thanos.
Yes. So you're just like, you know what deck can't play Werewolf well? That's discard. So you're just like, all right, what do I do? Like okay, here's the other one. Like this goes in vain with that, right? Like revert Werewolf by Night, revert Miss Marvel.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit.
Yes. Wow. No, like here's my idea is basically just like, all right, look, we need
because
to
you can't play Miss Marvel and Thanos.
Yes. We need to buff all these cards so you cannot play Thanos. Like you need to just be like because like when we talk about why Thanos is the way that it is, it's also just that like because Thanos is so amorphous, like it just sort of fills itself up with good cards, right? it's very rare that there's a good new card that Thanos can't play, except those are really good cards that Thanos couldn't play. And if we bring them back, maybe we can solve this problem without, slicing pieces off of Thanos until he dies.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like honestly, because Miss Marvel and Werewolf are also like kind of very difficult to play in the discard deck too, right? So
Yeah,
it's okay. I like that one the most. Yeah, they should do that. That's pretty good.
hell yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the Avengers versus X-Men event. I think it's sort of gone under the radar for a lot of people, but I know multiple players who've been like actually climbing with just like straight up, Avengers and or X-Men decks. And it's like, that might be like kind of memey, but I do think that they deserve credit. Not the players necessarily. I mean, yes, the players, but like when I said they, I meant Second Dinner for being able to make an event where it's like, yeah, people playing the meme decks can climb. Like that's meaningful, right? Where it's like you're playing like a deck that's like a meme deck for an event. You're effectively taking a Tavern Brawl deck onto like top 200 ladder. And I know D Money did this. He had like a deck that was just like entirely composed of Avengers. He was like, yeah, I'm climbing. I gained like 100 SP with this pile. It's just like, you know what? I just feel like you gotta be like, it says something about Marvel Snap that like changes that small can make a difference. I know Jeff Hoagland had a deck that was like all X-Men and it like had actually decent numbers on Untapped. And it's like, yeah, I think it says something about Marvel Snap and how balanced the game is outside of like the very highest outliers that's actually totally possible. And I think Second Dinner does deserve some credit for that.
Yeah, this event is fun. Like, it's like fun and relevant because like I feel Marvel Snap at its core, it's just win 2 lanes with the most points, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you give cards a way to get more points, it just kind of sometimes works. Like I remember the Valentine's Day event, the Vision and Scarlet Witch thing was also like sort of relevant, right? Like you got a bit of extra there as well. The funny thing for me is this has nothing to do with the stats itself. It's just that like I cannot for the life of me remember because I don't play those like specific decks. I cannot for the life of me remember like who's an Avenger, who's an X-Men. So I
Oh
just
god,
like
yeah.
so I just like I have to mouse over my cards because recently I just played a sort of like semi-competitive match whereby I used Helicarrier to discard a Helicarrier and I filled my hand with like lots of X-Men looking cards and I was like, wait, I might be able to win with this, but how? So I was just like mousing over every card, looking at which is an X-Men. But yeah, no, I think this is a very good event and like it's relevant, really relevant because like at the end of the day, it's really just win 2 lanes, most points, and now certain cards have additional ways of getting points.
Yeah, I had a game where at the end of it I had 6 X-Men, but I didn't know several of them were X-Men. And so
Exactly.
I was like, because it was a Loki game, right? It was their cards. So I was just like, can I get the X-Men buff here? And I had it by like 6. I had it by like multiple past it. I was just like, I didn't even realize I had it. It's just like, oh, I can get the X-Men buff here, I think. And it was just like, yes, you have 6 X-Men. You can get the X-Men buff here.
Okay, I got a question. Just a fun one. Like
Sure.
off the top of your head, like if you were to look at any card in the game right now that like if it were to suddenly appear in your hand, like maybe Helicarrier or whatever, and you'd be like, you wouldn't know it's a X-Men or Avenger. Which one would it be? Like if you just saw the card, you really had to mouse over it before you would like know.
Avengers. I think like the bottom end of the Avengers, I have absolutely no idea who they
Same.
are.
No, but like a card specifically. Is there a card specifically in the Avengers you
Oh
would have to mouse over?
no, because I don't know it.
Okay.
Next up is everyone's least favorite card, Mobius. I threw him on here as a topic because I was having a like fairly in-depth conversation with several other high elo players recently, and one thing that repeatedly came up was the following phrase: "Fuck Mobius." Like this came up a lot. Like
No.
multiple people independently were like, "I hate this guy. I hate that he's good now. I hate that people are playing him. All he's doing is killing fun." So what are your thoughts on Mobius M. Mobius?
Okay, so I do think Mobius limits like fun factor because I have a like Jet, my friend, he's like been trying to build this pixie deck, and I know that Jet loves his Moon Girl like shenanigans, but man, this Mobius is just completely destroying any hopes of making a good pixie deck, like for reals. But like other than that, honestly, my personal Mobius complaints aren't really that bad because I like to see my opponent play Mobius and I play around it. Like playing a Mockingbird on their Mobius turn feels really, really good. Like it's like the only time the Mobius kills the Mockingbird, and like when they play it on turn 3, you play Mockingbird on turn 3 and you feel really good. Of course, also another thing is like because I play a lot of discard recently, right? Like timing your swarms into their Mobius turn also feels really good. So yes, it does stop you from like doing some fun things, but I feel like being able to play around it is like a skill or like a intuition and instinct thing, which I don't mind in the game. So my personal complaint on Mobius is not that big.
I'm tempted to agree where it's just like I don't mind the guy too much, but he is kind of a fun police, right?
Yeah, he
Where
makes
it's
games
like,
boring. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, all right, we're just playing cards on curve, and you're a Thanos deck, and you're ramping with hope, and it's like, all right, we're playing games on curve, except, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, this restriction does apply, but also your deck is built to not care about it, right? With Thanos, because it's like, oh well, yeah, Thanos. I don't care what you're getting rid of my time stone. Who gives a shit, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
ramping. I don't care. I'm fine with that. And I think that like that sort of speaks to just like again, it's like Thanos' versatility, the wide swath of design space that it can incorporate within itself is such that it's just like, you could kind of do anything with the deck because of the power of like, turn one Mind Stone. Okay, I guess I'm probably winning, right? Like drawing two cards, that's pretty good, right? And so you just end up in these spots where it's like Thanos can change and morph and fit really any card in. And that is potentially not a dynamic that should be happening in Marvel Snap. I think like having Mobius in Thanos is just like really like
Fun
it just
please,
makes
yeah. There's already Prof and
yeah
Aliyah. Now we have Mobius as well.
yeah. It's
I
just like
like how like,
really
every single topic we talk about today, there is like a small 15-second mention of Thanos in every
has to be.
topic. Yeah, it's like no choice, right? Like it's just
Yeah,
warping the entire game right now.
he's the guy. Like he like I've been trying to express this. I talk about like wide design space, but it's just like Thanos is the strongest thing to be doing anything in. And as the game expands its design space, this becomes more pronounced, not less. Because anytime you make a card that you think is going to be like this niche card, you end up realizing that it's super broken in Thanos.
Yeah,
Like
I
Mockingbird, it's like you make Mockingbird, it's like, oh, she's a shield card. No, she's not. She's
no,
a
she's
Thanos
not.
card.
Yeah, she's not.
Yeah.
No one cares about her in Shield. They care about her in Thanos.
Yes.
It's like I mean
Right.
I have to say this right now, even though it's so cringe. I have to do the cringe thing. Thanos is just
Mm.
inevitable, man. It's just
Okay, that is cringe. You're right.
completely.
Yep, that was
I
extremely
have to. I
cringe.
have
That was
to.
that was awful.
For.
All right. With on that note, it's time to end. Thank you so much, Lamby, for joining me as always for 8 Cubes. You can catch the next episode of this on Lamby's channel. We had a mild scheduling snafu that led to some issues with getting that midweek episode out, but that will not happen in the future. You will be able to catch that midweek episode on Lamby's channel. Remember, subscribe here, subscribe on Lamby's channel, do all that stuff. Lamby, take us out.
All right. Thank you so much for being here together with us. I will see you guys in the next episode on my channel. Bye bye.